women today are choosing to have children later in life. Thanks to eggs freezing, women can delay pregnancy until a later stage in life. Now, some women freeze their eggs due to medical conditions which interfere with their reproductive health and hinder them from getting children at the early stage in life. On Moolah Insider this week, we dig into egg freezing as one of the growing methods of fertility preservation, the risk and cost implications involved. We'll also look at why costs of assisted reproductive techniques like IVF remain high and what can be done going forward. My name is Margaret Wahito. The value of the Kenya shilling continued to drop this week to a low of 108.5 shillings against the dollar. Now, this is the lowest in 3 months and has been attributed to increased demand for the dollar by importers and corporates. Now, corporates are paying dividends plus other transactions, and this has driven up the demand for the dollar. Now, the local currency has been on a consistent decline since the beginning of June. The Central Bank of Kenya held its bi-monthly monetary meeting this week, and it will be a wait and see how this will affect the local currency going forward. Now, we start the bulletin with word of the week. Our word of the week is in vitro fertilization. Now, this is an assisted reproductive technology commonly referred to as IVF. IVF is a joining of a woman's egg and a man's sperm in a lab. In short, in vitro means outside the body. Now, our word of the week takes us to our main story, and it's about egg freezing. Now, egg freezing is one of the many fertility preservation techniques by women and which is slowly gaining momentum in Kenya. It is simply a process of extracting eggs from the woman's ovary, freezing them and storing them for future use. Now, at least 10 to 15 matured eggs should be frozen to increase the chance of pregnancy. When the woman is ready to get pregnant, the frozen eggs are liquefied, fertilized with the sperm in a lab, then implanted into the uterus to achieve pregnancy. This week, we look at the reasons why this fertility method is slowly growing in Kenya, the risks involved, and why the costs still remain very high. Mercy Milanoi tells us more.
Experts say the best time to get pregnant is between your late 20s and early 30s. But the reality is that for the modern woman, the late 20s and the early 30s are likely to be spent chasing career, academic or personal goals, and the future can be uncertain. For the Kenyan woman at that age, there are likely to be aunties reminding them that they're not getting younger and they need to have babies when they're still young. Thanks to advances in technology, women can now freeze their eggs and use them much later when they're ready to have children.
Egg freezing, in medical terms we call it oocyte vitrification, is a process by which we get the eggs from the woman and then we freeze this egg for future use.
The technology known as embryo freezing has in the last decade gained traction among a growing number of middle-class women in their 20s. Although egg freezing is still rare in Kenya, there is a growing interest in the procedure. So what are some of the indications that could require one to get their eggs frozen?
There are indications by which a woman might need to do her eggs to be frozen. Maybe it's a young girl, above maybe 18 years or 20 years, who is going to have treatment exposed to chemotherapeutic agents or agents that can cause toxicity to the gonads or to the ovary. Or she's going to have what we call pelvic radiation. Radiotherapy, she has cancer or some disease that requires radiation therapy at the pelvic region or the abdominal region. Or she's on this medication, or she has some high-risk factors like genetic mutations or chromosomal mutations that will put her at risk of what we call premature ovarian failure or premature ovarian insufficiency. This means that later on in life, the ovaries might not be able to work because they're insufficient.
Experts say it is critical for women to receive enough education because it's a decision that requires careful consideration and realistic expectations.
One thing to note is that women eggs are finite in number, so they not like sperm. Sperms are produced like on a daily basis, but the female eggs, one is born with them, they keep on reducing in number And by the time they get to adulthood, most of the follicles or most of the eggs have undergone atresia. So what happens for the women who are at risk of these particular procedures or losing their fertility or premature ovarian insufficiency will be exposed to stimulation, and we stimulate them with some hormones, and for about 10 days, then we trigger the process of ovulation, and then we are able to harvest. So we harvest the eggs, and then the eggs are, we remove the water from them and rapidly frozen in liquid nitrogen at negative 196 degrees Celsius, and they can stay for life. So basically these are the main processes by which we do and the indications by which we do the egg freezing. Now there's a bit of trend towards what we call elective oocyte vitrification or elective egg freezing, where a woman chooses, because I'm busy, I'm going to school, or I do not have a husband, I don't want to have fertility now, they choose to have their eggs frozen. Very few studies have been done on the process of elective egg freezing, but it's actually a trend that's coming up, that many women are electing to freeze their eggs for future fertility.
Egg freezing and subsequent procedures come at a steep cost, so those who consider them valid and smart options need to be prepared.
On average, in most of the facility centers, will be about 300 to 350,000, and the eggs will be stored for as long as the patient wants them to be stored. The eggs will not grow to become embryos on their own. So what happens is that we do the process of IVF, or what we call intracytoplasmic sperm injection. It's called ICSI. So in this case, once the oocytes have been stored, they'll be thawed. Thawing means they'll be removed from that negative temperature to the normal temperature. And then at this temperature, actually incubation temperature, then they'll be mixed with sperms, so the eggs are mixed, or they'll be injected with sperms to form embryos. So this is called IVF, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection, and eventually you get the embryos that are formed. The embryos will be stored there for about 6 days to form what we call blastocysts, and the blastocysts are the ones that will be transferred into the woman's uterus for a baby to be born.
Even as they consider this as an option, women are advised to consider the risks before moving forward because of the risk to their health and, of course, the effect on their finances. The risk range from ovarian hyperstimulation to injury on the blood vessels.
Just like any medical intervention, in this case you are exposed to treatment and you get hormonal treatment for quite a number of days. Some cases one might have what we call hyperstimulation syndrome. So we stimulate the ovaries to be able to recruit enough number of follicles. So in rare circumstances, you might get the ovaries being hyperstimulated, and the woman suffers from what we call ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, which are basically many components, including abdominal swelling, respiratory complications, and this might need hospitalization and sometimes intensive care. So this is a rare complication, but it could happen. It's called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Another one is during the harvesting process. If not properly done, there could be injury to the blood vessels around the ovary, and this might require surgical procedure or surgical intervention. So the patient goes to theater for laparoscopy to clip the vessels that are bleeding. So these are some of the rare complications that can happen, but people need to know that they're exposed to these risks.
While egg freezing is legally acceptable, it's important that the eggs are harvested at the prime of the reproductive age. They add that those freezing their eggs electively, meaning for social reasons such as delaying childbearing due to career considerations or because they have not yet met a partner, should be given an idea of what their chances of success are when they thaw the eggs.
You have a choice to make at 40, for example. You want to say, you've now got a partner and you think this is a partner you want to have babies with. It's a choice. A woman might want to have babies with more than one person, but maybe it's this person you've identified. So you thaw everything. Once you thaw, you fertilize all the eggs. So you do either IVF or ICSI. Then you can now store the embryos, what we call embryo vitrification. Now with the embryo vitrification, you select maybe 2 or 3. In this country, we normally transfer 3 embryos. So you get the 3 embryos, you transfer, the rest are stored. It might pick, it might not pick. So when it picks, maybe 1 or 2 survive, sometimes none survives. Yeah, then you try a cycle again. You get the other embryos that have been frozen, you transfer. If they survive 3, we take care of you. If survive 2, we take care of you. 1, we take care. None, we also do take care of you. Then there's also a choice to say 20 eggs, I want to thaw only 5, fertilize and see. So you have a choice as a patient to make. This is a really procedure that people really need to know about it, though we're still doing more work on elective. That's the so-called elective oocyte freezing. But I know it's just because of the ethical issues. And so ethical issues, safety, costs, and then we also don't know the emotional aspect of it, that if you give an egg at 23 years, you get this egg fertilized and you get a baby at 40 years. We don't know the so-called emotional aspects of this, and these are things that are being currently studied.
Putting your eggs on ice could keep your future family planning options open. For majority of women, egg freezing is considered a fail-safe process, but it also could be emotionally, physically, and literally costly. So, consult with your doctor and consider all your options before making the call.
Now, thank you, Mercy, for that detailed information about egg freezing in the country. Now we go to our next story, and it's about the cost of fertility in the country. Now in Kenya, it is estimated that 2 in every 10 people suffer from one form of infertility or another. This is occasioned by numerous medical conditions, but with the growing technology, there are now several methods which have been adopted to help those with infertility challenges to get children. Some of the most common include intrauterine insemination or in vitro fertilization, as well as surrogacy. However, it may cost you up to 700,000 shillings to use either of these methods, depending with your health provider. Now we link up with Mercy Panja, who is a gender and sex and reproductive health expert, to take us through the dynamics around these assisted reproductive techniques. Why are they very expensive in the country? Mercy, maybe you can tell us more.
One of the reasons why women do not go to deliver in hospital, amongst many reasons, is affordability as well as accessibility. So now comes in the alternatives for fertility and technology. One, currently it is expensive because the personnel who are trained to undertake this kind of fertility services are not so many in Kenya. Secondly, it is the equipment and the services in general around these fertility issues. So the equipment to do these things, the harvesting, the injections, the medicines, they are quite expensive and currently not accessible to many people. So that is another thing that makes it very expensive. And another thing that, you know how markets work, if it doesn't have so much demand, of course it will be a bit expensive, because right now not so many people are aware of it, and not so many people want to access it, because people still have questions of, if I do it, will my child come out okay? Will my child be normal? Will my child be accepted by my family as well as the community in which I will bring up the child? So these myths and misconceptions again also make it to become a bit inaccessible.
Now, with this cost remaining high, what do you think can be done in future to ensure that it's affordable for everyone and it's even accessible for those who want to get children?
One thing that can enable this to happen, I think the regulatory frameworks within Kenya. So currently, we do not have policies within Kenya that support these alternatives. I remember the reproductive health bill was being reviewed, and in 2019, it was, I think, it didn't go through because it faced some of the opposition. And this is one of the bills that would have actually captured surrogacy, IVF, and all these things that are alternative in fertility to actually come and be recognized as services that people can access when it comes to issues with maternal health. So once we have a very good regulatory framework, that is a policy, a bill, or a law that actually allows for this, then it becomes easier for people to look at a market approach. The government can actually introduce a caveat to prices of these things so that we do not have people who charge so much and others, the market should at least be aligned so that it is easier for people to access these services. So they put in a caveat so that we do not go past that ceiling when it comes to giving these services. And also once now it is in law, we are sure that a majority of these services right now are being given in private facilities. Maybe the main referral national hospital has these services, but a majority are being given in private facilities. So once it is taken up in law, then it can be introduced now to public facilities. In Kenya, I think it's close to maybe $25,000. I don't think it's less than 250,000, which is quite costly. So families that have issues with infertility have to use a lot of money to get a child, which I think is very expensive. And also, it is not acceptable with very many people. Actually, you're stigmatized when you say you got your child through IVF, or you got your child through surrogacy. People look at you like you're less of a mother, and there's a lot that goes around it. But anyway, looking at cost, the cost is very high, and I think the cost needs to be regulated and needs to go down. Also, I feel like for us to have this cost in check, we need to have more people trained on how to give out these services, have healthcare workers who have specialized in these areas, being given these opportunities to provide these services, even in public hospitals. And also availability of equipments. If these equipments can be availed, because right now we hear even people traveling from Tanzania coming to Nairobi to actually access these services. So if these things can be availed, then I think the cost can be very good. So availability, accessibility, and cost go hand in hand.
Now, thank you, Marcia Panja, for the detailed insights on what can be done to reduce the cost of infertility in the country and allow at least everyone who is able and who wants to get children to get these services. Well, you're watching Moolah Insider, and remember to check out our website www.moolah.co.ke for more stories. And please remember to link with us on our social media pages. Coming up is another exciting episode of Pursuits. You're watching Moolah Insider, and this week, Philippe Bresson is our star. He has shot over 4,000 episodes of television shows such as My Two Wives, Junior and Socialites, which currently air on our local TV stations and Showmax. Now, he's one of the most sought-after television producers in Kenya. He has made an indelible mark in the film industry, and last year he gained global recognition after Insignia Productions, the video production company which he co-founded, was commissioned by Cartoon Network to produce its pop-up party show.
Just finished my 60-minute cardio workout. I'm gonna go take a shower. Hi, my name is Citronella. Hashtag blessed.
Get out of my car! Get out of my car! Get out!
I started off as a musician, I had an interest in music. I'd play bass, I'd play guitar, and that moved to producing. So I produced some neighborhood kids who had some bars, they could rap. The natural progression from that was getting music videos done for them. And music video directors were very expensive back then. We hustled the way we hustled, and I thought about a light bulb moment. Philippe Bresson, who's my cousin, an exceptional filmmaker. So I hit him up. I was like, yo, Robs, you have some cameras, so what's the deal? My business partner back then, Jennifer Gatero, who's super talented, scriptwriter and filmmaker, wrote Better Days when she was like 16. We used to do a lot of pro bono documentaries, like a lot. And I'd get on set with her and I'd do the setup, And she would be like, man, you know, you have the eye. And I was like, well, what eye, man? You keep talking about this eye, you know. But then what that meant was I had something special in how I'd perceive, you know, different scenes. Jenny, being who she is, you know, she had this amazing script called Changing Times. So these guys read it, they're like, we like the script, but the condition is we need to see a pilot. Jennifer is freaking out. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? I felt I was ready and able to put it together cinematically. And she was like, okay, let's give it a shot. So, you know, we put together everything we need for the pilot shoot.
My role in Changing Times, I play Elizabeth, the wife to a very wealthy businessman and stepmother of 2 children that don't like me very much.
Are you really serious?
Heard through the grapevine that there was a production coming up in KTN and it sounded so cool.
I'm the lady of this house now.
And I would have shot myself if I wasn't a part of it. So I really just stalked the producer. I found out his phone number. I was calling him day and night. I stalked my way into this role.
We submitted the pilot. It was so good, and the trailer that KTN was like, we literally have another show in development. We're doing the scripts, but you guys are gonna film it for us. And that was Moshimio. Some of the challenges have been, you know, getting cancellations on some of the content, you know. But one of the most recent highlights was directing an episode of TED Talks. That was huge because TED Talks is a global brand, and we had the chance to produce, and I directed the episode, which is soon to be released.
There is a whole world of stories behind everyone's eyes.
In 2015, we embarked on a Pan-African journey, and we decided to produce this show called New Beginnings.
So what you're saying is that I am legally married to both Derek and Sean?
What? And we put it together, and it was absolutely beautiful. And what ended up happening is it aired on Ebony Life in Nigeria and aired on ETV in South Africa. It was a good experience to just have money and be able to, you know, grow my skills with the money that we were making. So, you know, if it meant I'd do workshops in different parts of the world, maybe go to New York for a workshop or things like that. That was good. The thing about being a filmmaker is you have to stay in touch with technology, because the technology that we were using 3 years ago right now is completely irrelevant, you know? We just started like when HD came out and we're shooting 1080 and it was amazing. But 12 years down the line, you know, guys are shooting 8K. So it's like you have to keep learning, you have to keep, you know, researching. Now, a lot of people don't know the work that we do. I've shot over 100 documentaries. I have shot over 4,000 episodes of TV shows. I've done over like 90 TVCs.
It's bye-bye old things, bye-bye new things.
But what they don't realize is we put in the time, and the time has led to these big jobs. Because what it means is when we're putting in the time to work, we're investing in our skills, we're getting better, we're sharpening the tool, you know, it's getting really sharp. And, you know, we then get to a point where we've gotten so good that we can work with any international company. And that really is what the story of Cartoon Network is. We were pitching with a global company that did not know any of us. So it was the most fair process possible. And we went there and just...
Philippe Bresson's story now takes us to our leading indicators this week, starting with the stocks and the foreign exchange. Now let's take a look at the best prices of basic commodities this week across selected supermarkets. That's all we had for you this week on Moolah Insider. Please remember to also check out our website www.moolah.co.ke for more stories and link up with us on our social media pages. My name is Margaret Wahito. See you next week.